So you have a great idea for a business. Now what? So this is part 2. This is, what do you do after you have the idea? So you may or may not have had an aha moment. I happen to have had one, a moment where I just saw sort of my path forward, how I wanted my life to look, and who I wanted to represent in my community. But whether or not you had this moment or not, it doesn't really matter. Maybe it was a slower process for you. Maybe it is birthed from something you were already doing. But what do you do now that you have this great idea? My advice would be to write. Write everything you think the business is. When I was getting started, I wrote pages and pages and pages. What ended up being only a 20-page document, but I wrote way more than that. 20 pages is how it ended. That was like the final draft that I submitted to the lawyer. So my first piece of advice is to write everything you think about regarding your business. Think about the kinds of people you're trying to attract, exactly what you're gonna do. And I mean, like, nail it down as much as possible, because honestly, once you get going, all of this is gonna change anyway. And the more of an idea you have about who you are as a company and what you offer and who you're trying to attract, the easier it's gonna be down the line when all of that goes out the window and you have to change it, because chances are it will. As much as I wrote, I find every day that there are questions that I have to answer now that I actually have my space. So if you have a business that's going to have an actual location, an actual shop, or however you want to call it, but like an actual physical space where you're conducting the business, take into account that this space will change everything you think you know about your business, because so much is often dependent on the space we get as to what we can do. For instance, my business is a community business that helps artists and other self-employed people do their thing, create their art, live their lives, and work in a way that's more sustainable than everybody renting their own space full-time. They can rent parts of my space part-time. So I have 3 different spaces, I have a lot of equipment available, and then there's like obviously a range of prices, there's memberships, blah, 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 blah. You're not here to learn about my business, you're here to learn about your business. So, but once I got my space, it turns out I had way more questions. I thought I knew exactly what my business was, but when I got my space, I realized, oh, right, so this changes some things. And now I have to answer this question about the acoustics. Now I have to answer this question about the lighting. And you may not originally think about these things as you're thinking about like starting a business, but realize if you're having a physical space, you will have to deal with the actual physical space that you get. So write until you think that you understand your business better than anybody could possibly ever understand of anything in the entire world. Make a PowerPoint. This became incredibly important for me. I didn't actually finish it, and I didn't actually end up presenting it to investors. Another video on that. But the actual act of doing it helped me boil down prime ideas. So I had this document, I had all these pages, I had like a journal completely full of ideas about my business. Then I connected it to visual images. And then I boiled it down to the key points, the basis of what I wanted to do as a company. Because an investor doesn't want to see a 25-page document. They want to see something pretty that boils down that document. And then if they're interested, they'll read the document. Whether or not you actually need investors, or this is, maybe it sounds like nonsense to you, but it was so helpful. Not just to boil down the ideas about my business, because once you start opening, people will ask you so many questions. Your friends, your family, these people that you think understand what you're doing, they're going to ask you questions. And it's amazing. It's amazing to have that feedback because you have to keep constantly thinking about your business. You have to keep reevaluating how you're presenting it in a way that brings up these questions. You have to keep asking questions. You have to keep searching. And it's going to happen. The whole time you have a business, you're going to be learning. You're going to be searching for the business. You don't just, it's like having a kid. You don't know what's going to expect. And the kid you have is going to continue to evolve. The business you have will continue to evolve. And the more questions you are prepared to answer, the better off you're going to be, because there are going to be so many questions you can't answer. So write, and then boil it down to key points. And these key points will be the things that probably won't change. No matter what else happens, these are your core ideas. These are the essentials. This is the heart of what you're building, and it's probably not going to change. Maybe it does, because life happens, right? But it's probably not going to change that much. And the other thing is, creating this visual will really help you with what I'll talk about in the next video, which is your brand identity. So I'm not going to get into it in this video, but for me, because I have a business based on art and creativity, for me, the visual is obviously very important because I am catering to people who are inherently attracted to visual stimuli. And not just that, but they have an aesthetic. Aesthetic is important to them, and they're probably a little bit more picky than your average Joe off the street. You know, they're not like, if something's crooked, an artist will probably know, or if the colors are just a little bit off. So write, and then turn that into a condensed version with some visuals. And this will lead you to what's next, which is your brand identity. And as you will see in these first two videos, I am rocking this yellow background with this blue shirt because a huge part of my brand identity is these two colors. So think about that as you make your PowerPoint and write. Write things you don't think are important. Write about the coasters you will have if you're opening a cafe. Write about the materials you want to use. Write about the ambiance you want to have with your lighting design. I know these are things that seem really nitpicky, but they're so important to building who you are as a company. For example, my company, everything is in secondhand. It's something that was important to me, but it also is an opportunity for my company, which caters to people who create, to recreate these old pieces of furniture, to rebuild them, to fashion them in a way that once again will help me build my brand identity. If you have any questions, if you're dealing with any problems, please let me know. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.